Jintao has given a rare press conference warning the Olympic Games must not be politicized. He said raising disputes during the Olympics would not help to resolve them. These are the latest headlines from BBC World News.
Find out more. Go to bbcworldnews.com/click. You're watching BBC World News.
Focus Asia Business Leaders is proudly sponsored by the University of Hong Kong.
New Voices, the private TV channel making waves in China. Pushing the boundaries, how its reporters cover topics previously thought off limits. Hello from Hong Kong and welcome to Focus Asia Business Leaders. I'm Karen Koh. In this series, we go behind the scenes with some of Asia's top executives. Our subject in this program is a man who's changed the face of TV news in China. Liu Changle worked as a farmer, a laborer, and a colonel in the Chinese army before becoming a journalist. He then went on into the world of business before entering satellite television. Jim Laurie has more.
Around the clock, 24/7, news and entertainment for Chinese audiences.
Great desire for news and information about the world.
Hong Kong broadcaster Feng Huang, or Phoenix Satellite Television, has spread its wings across the border, where the Communist Party traditionally controls all media.
When Phoenix reported on big events like the Hong Kong handover, the angles we chose were completely different than those chosen by TV stations in mainland China. We provided more information in an entertaining style.
Today, the broadcaster's flagship channel, Phoenix Chinese, a mix of talk shows, news, and entertainment, can be seen in an estimated 55 million households in mainland China. And through its all-news Info News channel, 30 million households. With 5 channels in all, Phoenix broadcasts span the globe, reaching overseas Chinese in Europe, North America, and across Asia as well. The man who gave rise to Phoenix is Shanghai-born Liu Changle.
Well, he has a vision. He has a passion as well. With these two, the vision and the passion, he's driving this company from day one.
On this day, we found Liu catching up with yesterday's programs on the internet while monitoring his news channel in the background. He's just flown in from Beijing for a Phoenix board meeting, a Bank of China ceremony, and then he'll catch a 13-hour flight to Los Angeles. It may sound exhausting, but for Liu, keeping Phoenix on course has always been a hectic challenge that he welcomes.
Phoenix has zigzagged along through a range of difficulties beyond imagination. It's fortunate that we've stuck with a fundamental attitude. When we prepare news and commentary, we keep an active, well-intentioned and constructive attitude toward China's opening up and reform.
To critics, that news philosophy is the equivalent of self-censorship, doing things Beijing's way. On Phoenix, you won't see interviews with the Dalai Lama or supporters of Chinese democracy, and Taiwan's president is referred to as Taiwan's leader. But when you visit the newsroom, you'll find a unique international mix of journalists from mainland China, Taiwan, and Hong Kong, all working together to produce programs with more edge than mainland viewers have ever seen.
We produce hookup programs from Beijing, Hong Kong, and Taipei.
The birth of Phoenix is reflected in its logo. 2 Phoenix coming together from east and west to form an eye, a single vision. Phoenix began its satellite enterprise in 1996 as a joint venture with Rupert Murdoch's Star Television. It suited Murdoch's desire to crack the China market and Liu's need to gain satellite access.
I believe we have an unspoken goal. The shareholding structure should allow Phoenix to develop more revenue and a higher coverage rate.
Those goals are more complicated than what most broadcasters have to deal with. Because it broadcasts via satellite out of Hong Kong, Phoenix is legally a foreign broadcaster. In mainland China, it has official landing rights only in Guangdong province. 80 million people there, but only 6% of the nation's population. Still, cable operators in every province of China downlink Phoenix's signal, distributing it to many more millions of households.
Operation-wise, we are totally clean. And that's one of the reasons why we can actually get ourselves listed in Hong Kong. We are subject to very strict regulations. If any part of our business is what we call gray or illegal, we won't be here.
Phoenix's job is therefore to persuade viewers, cable operators, and advertisers that watching and doing business with Phoenix won't get them in trouble. One way to achieve that is through safe content and China-friendly news. A watershed moment in the company's history occurred at an international press conference in 1998, when then Chinese Premier Zhu Rongji singled out Phoenix anchor Sally Wu, telling her how much he enjoyed watching her programs. Wu responded by saying Zhu was her idol before proceeding with her question.
After the press conference, everyone was asking about the woman putting questions to Premier Zhu, because in responding to my questions, he promised that the Chinese central government would fully support Hong Kong in any difficulty. The Hong Kong Stock Index gained 300 points on that day. Honestly, that experience was extremely encouraging to both Phoenix and me. More and more people came to know what Phoenix was, who we were, and what we did.
Endorsements like this helped Phoenix successfully target an influential and highly educated audience. At the moment, China lacks a sophisticated rating system, so no one knows for sure just how many eyeballs are glued to Phoenix. Still, Phoenix is able to sell 30-second primetime commercials for about $6,000 apiece, helping it produce revenues nearly 10 times that of any other foreign broadcaster seen in China. Its top advertisers are tobacco companies. The channel uses just their names, not full commercials, because smoking ads in China are not permitted. Phoenix's strategies are starting to pay off. Its staff has grown to around 800, half based in Hong Kong, and in 2005 it turned a profit of $23.3 million. When Phoenix marked 10 years on the air, it was a cause for celebration. A 10th anniversary gala. Stars, moguls, and even religious leaders were at the event. Liu Changle networking with some of Greater China's most influential people. Connections in China are said to be the key to Liu's success, but Liu says times are changing.
Connections are no longer the key to business in the mainland. It's been said that connections were the key in the 80s, courage the key in the 90s, but in the 21st century, the key is intelligence.
Whether gambling on news in China qualifies as an intelligent business decision is still debatable. The Info News channel suffered through 5 years of losses before finally breaking even in mid-2006. Phoenix CEO Liu Changle knows that if he doesn't play ball with mainland censors, his TV channels will simply be cut off.
As long as we practice according to the rules set by the government and respect their conventions, customs, and laws, there will still be enough space for us to develop.
Liu understands Chinese politics. He's learned the hard way. As a middle school student in northwest China, he says his family was severely affected by the 10-year-long period of Maoist policies known as the Cultural Revolution. Facing harsh economic conditions, Liu moved to the countryside. He held jobs as a farmer and a laborer. Later, he became a soldier in the People's Liberation Army. He then studied at Beijing's Broadcast Institute, moving on to a career as a radio reporter for a government station. Eventually, he entered the world of business, working in oil in Houston and trading in Singapore and Hong Kong.
I am an integration of worker, farmer, soldier, student, and businessman. Few can have such resourceful experiences. It's been very precious to me.
These experiences have laid the groundwork for Liu's understanding not only of what the Chinese government will allow, but what the Chinese audience wants.
When we come back, our panel of experts will analyze Liu Changle's success and probe the issue of censorship in China. That's after the break. And joining me now in the studio are Vivek Kuto of Media Partners Asia and David Bandersky of the University of Hong Kong's China Media Project. Gentlemen, thanks very much for joining us today. Vivek, if I can ask you first, how would you explain Phoenix TV's success?
I think its success is a combination of the charismatic and intelligent leadership of Mr. Liu, and also it's a somewhat unique play on advertising growth in China, which is of course linked to significant economic growth. Of course, within that structure, as your program is showing, there are inconsistencies and problems for Phoenix in terms of regulation, intensifying competition from other broadcasters in China and also some foreign channels, and also the fact that it perhaps has reached its peak now and it's looking for a new direction or a new challenge or a new growth driver.
David, we got a little bit of a taste of Mr. Liu's background and his personal history. Do you think that he holds ideals? Does he believe in democracy? Does he believe in freedom of speech? Has that shaped the way he's run his companies?
He has said in a lot of media interviews, he's talked about his sort of dedication to China's economic development, and this has been another, I think, important part of Phoenix strategy. But he's also recognized that he's targeting the elite in China and has access to the elite in China, and they also share this vision. They've benefited from China's economic reforms and have a vested interest in seeing that growth go forward. So I think he sees, in that sense, he sees himself serving that overall project, but I think his vision does differ slightly from the party leaders, and I think that does come out in Phoenix news coverage and programming.
Critics, though, still say that they do self-censor.
I think that's a given for anyone who's doing media in China, but particularly Chinese language media. That's kind of the condition of access to media in China, because again and again the Communist Party has affirmed that control of the media is the condition for entry. So that isn't, I don't think is surprising.
What sort of competition does Phoenix face in China?
The competition has basically, in some instances, have caught up with them, and in some instances, quite dramatically exceeded them. You've got other people in Shanghai, Shanghai Media Group, for instance, that's producing great stuff, and Phoenix Chinese channel kind of looks a bit dated now.
So how do analysts and advertisers view Phoenix?
Historically, what happened with Phoenix is between 96 and 2000, no one knew about it because it wasn't listed. Then it listed in 2000, and it really was rocketing ahead. It was the only play on China TV advertising that was listed for investors, still is, though there's other Chinese companies, media companies listed, but not in TV. And after a couple of years, then you had the 9/11 and a bit of economic softness, but Phoenix was going down, and there was suspicion because I think Mr. Liu and a lot of the management blamed this performance on macroeconomic problems, but China's economy, as you know, even during the 2001-2002 problems that the world was seeing in the US and Europe, were still roaring ahead. And a lot of companies like CCTV were growing 30-40% per year, Shanghai Media Group at 20%. And Phoenix was still seeing, 4%, 5% growth, and it seemed odd. And I think that's the main problem that investors and analysts and even ad agencies have with these is how come Phoenix is kind of just crawling along, whereas Chinese media is kind of growing at a double-digit pace. Phoenix is underperforming that market.
So, David, do you think in a way Phoenix allows itself a lot more freedom because it is a little bit out of the reach of mainland authorities, because it is in Hong Kong?
You can see it, actually. You watch the programming. For every mainland media do this as well. They find because there are good television journalists and print journalists in China, they have to find ways to navigate the kind of obstacle course of orders and bans and what you can report and what you can't. And they have to find formulas for this. One example I think of is Southern Weekend, one of the finest newspapers in China. And one of the editors in the newsroom used to say, well, we can't always report the truth, but we won't tell lies. And I've seen media interviews with Liu Changle, and he said a very similar thing. He's talked about a kind of commitment to news or to the truth, or not shying away from issues in China's history and its commentaries and documentaries, etc. I think that being in Hong Kong and the one country, two systems does offer that more possibility. In many ways, they can play that game, which they have to, being a Chinese language, especially a Chinese language programmer. They can play that game much more effectively and push the envelope.
Next, Cultural Revolution, how Phoenix changed the look of news in China.
Much of the on-air talent comes from Taiwan, where the programming is far more stylish than the more staid look of China's state television. One of Phoenix's big stars is Taiwan native Sally Wu. She, like almost all the anchors, have written their own autobiographies, many of which have become bestsellers. And on the mainland, it's common for people from all walks of life, even members of China's Congress, to line up for her autograph.
People would gather around asking for our autographs, and I later found out from analysts that the idea of journalists being treated as stars on the mainland only occurred with Phoenix.
My principles of managing Phoenix are totally different than those on the mainland. I focus on brand establishment. It's critical to bring personality to the spotlight. The media in mainland China are on behalf of officials and the government, expecting broadcasters to be of the same tone, same voice, same face. 1,000 people with one face. Phoenix went in the opposite direction. Everyone could have an appearance, a face, a different personality of their own.
Liu now calls his TV strategy his 3F principle: famous anchors, famous commentators, and famous reporters. Through Phoenix, Shanghai native Rose Liu Chu has become mainland China's first famous war correspondent. Rose covered the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq.
We saw a lot of bombing there, bombing the civilians. The house was destroyed, and actually one time a bomb was just 100 meters around us, and but all the people, all the reporters working there just treat that as a very normal thing.
Away from the war zones, battles also take place within the newsroom. Rose freely admits when broadcasting sensitive topics into mainland China, the government's representatives have the final say.
So you just push and push and push to try to see where is the bottom line. And sometimes you successfully to do the as large as you can, but sometimes it's quite sometimes you will receive some calls from mainland and say, oh no, you cannot do this, and we just stop and maybe try next time.
But they do take chances and push the envelope. While state media did little, Rose took on the story of the death of ousted Communist Party leader Zhao Ziyang in January 2005. Zhao had been under house arrest after sympathizing with the Tiananmen protesters in 1989. Rose's story was the first Mandarin language broadcast to report Zhao's death in mainland China, and she went after exclusive pictures of the hospital room where Zhao was treated.
People have the right to know it, and the people Why I think it's important for us is because if we didn't do that, people can get information through the other channels, and then they will lost the trust of us.
Rose says Phoenix played the report several times before mainland officials eventually killed the story. The fact that it aired at all is still seen as a victory for Phoenix. Liu Changle made the ultimate decision to go ahead and run the story himself. Even though he's the CEO, he still calls in and checks in on reporters, offering advice and critiques. It's clear that Phoenix's reporters trust his judgment.
With us.
Being based in Hong Kong, Phoenix appears to be allowed more leeway than stations on the mainland. But some Phoenix executives feel if the channel grows too much beyond its current 20% of the viewing audience, it could spell trouble.
I believe a goal of reaching 30 to 40% of the viewing audience would be more than satisfactory. I wouldn't dare expect a coverage of 100%.
Getting too big of an audience could cause mainland authorities to increase their monitoring and impose more restrictions. Expanding would also mean reaching more rural viewers, but that's not part of a business model which targets influential decision makers and the wealthy urban elite. Liu wants to promote other ways for the company to expand its audience and tap into new revenue streams.
We want to go into digital cable, digital whatever, because they're all technical device. They need contents.
The development of new media, such as the internet, is providing Chinese people with increasing channels for information. No firewall or methods can prevent all the information from coming in. We are in a new era. Information and communication brought in through technology, satellite TV, mobile phones, and the internet can't be controlled. Chinese leaders are becoming more and more open and liberal. When they find it impossible to manage and plan news information anymore, there's no turning back. They must take the road ahead.
Liu Changle not turning back from the challenges of television in China. And in the past few months, Phoenix has wrestled with more stories of a controversial nature. It towed Beijing's line on the Olympic torch relay and demonstrations over Tibet. But on China's earthquake story, it was among the first Chinese media to question the poor construction of schools in Sichuan province, which led to more deaths among children. Well, that's all for this edition of Focus Asia Business Leaders. I'm Karen Koh. Goodbye.
Focus Asia Business Leaders is proudly sponsored by the University of Hong Kong.
Shape the channel. bbcworldnews.com/contact us.